in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What draws behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this, the third part in a perhaps 3-part series, might be more, on the Myers-Briggs personality type. And of course, you are here listening to Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder every Wednesday, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, ladies and gentlemen. And you see, we're talking about the Myers-Briggs personality. It's important to understand what people pay attention to. Okay, and how they make decisions. Do they pay attention to abstractions or to concretes? Do they make decisions based on rational, balanced thinking, or do they make it based on emotions and what they typically would call values? Do they care more about that kind of a thing versus another kind of a thing? This is something that is very important for us to understand. Okay, the idea of categorizing people based on their various, shall we say, types is a old notion, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, all the way from horoscopes and all that other kind of good stuff, astrology and whatnot. But anyways, shout out to you in the chat. Go ahead and click that like button. Share this stream. Go ahead and share the stream. All right, and subscribe if you have not already. How's it going, Dr. Thunder? How's it going, Kaizo? You guys ready for this? You have an opening volley?
Yeah, I'm ready. How are y'all doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. You sound like your throat is constricted.
No, it's good. It's good.
All right. Except I didn't pay for his picture. Oh, gotcha. You're talking about the the little the watermark, I believe they call it.
Because there's no water in Africa, man. You even have a watermark.
There is no
Now
water.
that is dusty.
No water in Africa. Yeah, you got to promote the photographer. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen. In the first part, we started out talking about the basic 4 dichotomies, right? Are you an introvert or an extrovert, right? A common understanding, not so complicated. Basically boils down to how you deal with energy and recharging. Do you recharge alone, or do you recharge in, or you're a psychic vampire? We also talked about, are you a thinker versus a feeler? That's an easy one, right? That's an easy one to understand. We know also about the intuitive versus sensor. This has to do with your relationship with abstraction, with the intuitives being more comfortable with abstractions, more comfortable with an outline, and then diving in and then filling in the details as they go, right? And then we also talked about perceiver versus the judging type. Now, this is a complicated one, but basically the judgers are trying to come to a conclusion that they will stick to and then kind of brush other things aside. That's kind of the easiest way to start to think about that. But anyways, we then went through various personality types where we started introducing all the functions, SI, TI, blah, 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 blah. But shout out to you, Chaos Rain. Shout out to IC3 in the building, 99 Bash, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so we're going to continue a review of this video here. And we'll play a little bit of this INTJ part, and then we'll get into number 8, whatever number 8 might be. Let's go right ahead into it, ladies and gentlemen.
For you. You expect excellence. While this can sometimes be taken to an extreme and lead to harmful levels of perfectionism, most of the time it means that INTJs find success in whatever area they pursue. In fact, INTJs are some of the highest earners out of all of the Myers-Briggs personality types. Number 8, ESTJ, the director. What do George Washington, Judge Judy, Michelle Obama, and Margaret Thatcher have in common? They're all ESTJ personality types. As you can see, this personality type, also known as the director, makes great leaders. This is due to their ability to get things done quickly and efficiently and their skill in managing others. So if a friend has ever joked that maybe you should run for political office, it might be a sign that you're an ESTJ. Number 9.
So, yes, sir, ESTJ. So, Kaiser, what's the first function of an ESTJ? What's the first cognitive function? What do they lead with, if you will?
Yeah, so with an ESTJ, you're going to have them with a judging function first, which is FE. So they are FE first. Sorry, no, that's wrong. TE, sorry about that. Yes. They're a judge, or they're going to have a judging function first. So that's TE. So extroverted thinking. So whenever they're thinking, or even about doing something, there is always, well, what's an efficient way for me to make this procedure happen? So, for example, let's say an ESTJ isn't your grandma who cooks with love. No, your ESTJ is the person that memorizes a recipe and uses the same recipe every time unless they're trying to innovate. So they will more or less, they might not use specific measuring tools, but they will measure with their eyes, but accurately.
So very good there, right? So you got an ESTJ and they're TESI, which is that kind of a memory function of things, how they are, how they fit, not ideas. Like so far, they're not intuitives, right? And I think that, to give an example, right? Give an example from these YouTube streets. Remember, we talked about ESTPs and perhaps Mr. Fantastic kind of embodying that type of deal. And ESTJ is a Kevin Samuels type. Now, do you disagree with that, Kaizo? Before we, do you think?
No, because definitely don't disagree with that. So look at Kevin Samuels, perfect example of an ESTJ model, right? Archetype. He kept trying different things until he found what works, right? He made a show. He wasn't tinkering on the show every single episode like how I do things, or even sometimes how I can Dr. Thunder do things. He literally just kept doing the exact same thing that worked, show in, show out. He only innovated here and there, and even then he didn't let it stay because he knew where the bread and butter and where his message was most strong at. So that's an example. TE is looking for
look at his
operational
list, his advice, right? The high value man and the 7 things, right? It's not an idea. It's these things. Okay. And you might agree or disagree with those things. That's not the point. It's just the way of paying attention and the way of conveying information. I would never give a list of 7 anything about anything, right? I will give you an outline, a construct, some kind of notion, an idea, not a list. And Kevin Samuels was full of lists, and this is a kind of a classic TESI thing. Dr. Thunder, any comments so far?
So, something that occurred to me is, so say you're in a relationship. Okay, you're in a, we'll say, romantic relationship, right? And say the woman is more of a feeler. Say you're more of a thinker. Say you're more of a not the sort of adventurous type, but more of the highly structured, need to work it out before you're going to do it type of thing. But the feeler, which also happens to be more of a risk taker, is trying to get you to quote unquote come out of your shell. Okay, I mean, you see these sort of rom-coms where you've got the stiff dude and he's confronted by the woman that's wild and free. Okay, wild and free, but not quite for the streets, but wild and free, enticing to get the attention of the guy. But then she's trying to make him do all of this wild stuff and loosen up and all this kind of stuff. When you consider the sort of personality profiles, and how different people are, and especially as far as maintaining something long term, that seems quite foolish. What say you?
You start with that, Kaizo.
Can you repeat the last point, Dr. Thunder?
Well, I'm saying is if the woman is more of the wild and free type and the guy is more of the structured type, in like a classic rom-com, she's trying to get him to come out of his shell and venture and experience new things. So I'm saying that seems unwise because it's not likely that either party is going to be able to maintain. Well, she might be able to maintain being pushy, but he's not going to be able to maintain being, liberated, becoming all of a sudden something that he's not. But that seems to be like a common sort of storyline in these sort of rom-coms and things. So it seems to me to not make a lot of sense and not to be sustainable if you understand what the sort of personality type of the person that you're with, and you're expecting them to do stuff that is not in line with what their personality type is. Maybe they could do it for short term, but they're not going to be able to do it long term. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think this is why society's created rules of engagement. So if you look at Islamic or let's say East African cultures, men are in control of deciding the partners of the women because that's a tradition. They kind of know what's there for. And also, I guess traditionally across most of human history, it's always been the relationship has been catered by the need to survive. So right, that was a driving factor. I think the issue now is this enjoyment, this feeling, this optimism. And it's not just optimism because I think so. Yes, personality types are relevant, but even just let's say from a man-woman dynamic, women have much less, let's say, negative consequences when they behave in the way that they naturally behave. But if men behave that way, they become dusty, and they don't have they're not able to fulfill themselves. And I think that obviously this is why you have baby mamas, and we can go down all the way down that path. I think ultimately you just need to be with a woman that's mature enough to understand that you don't just behave this way because you are rigid or uncool. It's because that system works, and it works by you providing the things that she values. So there's a level of maturity there.
Yeah, well, you're still more general than my question. My question is about specific personality types. If you know that you're with somebody that is a more structured, not a risk taker, the type that needs to plan things out, that's their personality type, versus somebody that's more sort of liberated. I suppose the guy could be the more risk taker, and the woman could be the one that needs to be more like, I need to know what I'm doing before I'm doing it. You're not really going to be able to get them to get outside of that. So maybe when the hormones are flowing in the beginning of the relationship, perhaps you can get them to, behave in a way that's not typical, but long term they're going to revert to what their personality type is. So it just makes it seem even that much more unrealistic, the sort of common, rom-com, sort of plots where the stiff person is confronted with the love of their life and it causes them to discover their true self and all this stuff. That's
Let me pick up on where Kaizo left it, apply some NITE, if you will, and then I can throw it back to Kaizo, and we'll see if we are catching what you're throwing. So wisdom or maturity, Kaizo called it maturity, another calls it, might call it wisdom. Basically, with regards to personalities and with regards to this particular divide, is that one person, let's say the free spirit that's trying to drag this rigid person, it looks like that person, okay, what wisdom would look like for that person is to begin to appreciate these weaker functions, because this thing, right, that this other person has, okay, is something that's useful, it's functional. They lack it. They also know, if they're wise, okay, that this is the process of wising up, knowing that, okay, this is something that I'm not particularly good at. I'm not particularly good at structure and so on and so forth, okay? Wisdom or maturity is understanding that they don't have that thing, but that thing is valid from the other person's perspective. They respect that function, okay? Now, the people in this MBTI community, they talk a lot about a healthy versus an unhealthy type, right? Of whatever type, right? And a healthy versus an unhealthy one, a mature versus an immature one. And when it comes to a divide that is really wide, such as, okay, this wild free spirit, blah, 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 that kind of it would take a lot of wisdom on the part of the rom-com story. Obviously, it doesn't happen. It's not going to happen within that short space of time. And typically, there's a preferred person that they want to wise up. Typically, is the person who's more rigid that they want to kind of break and let loose, whatever, right? It's never that other person, the wild one coming and understanding. But basically,
but the structured dude is not, long term is not going to become wild.
No, he's not. And neither will the other person change to become more structured. That's why we're talking about maturity and wisdom, and we're not talking about change in behavior, right? It's a question of this person actually not being crazy anymore and seeing that, hey, I'm going to be wild and I appreciate what that other person is doing. I'm not going to be judging them as though, it was some kind of a strange, unnatural beast. It's like, no, that's that thing that they're good at. I'm not good at it per se. And I'll just let it be. Now, what are the chances that this happens in the majority of people? The chances are slim. To Kaizo's point, in the past, we've had these cultural scaffolds that channeled people in the right directions, right, regarding how things are going to work, right? Things evolve naturally, become traditions, and then people have this scaffolding that says this is how you act within the relationship to make it work. When that breaks apart, only the people who can become wise can actually narrow this divide between these two people, if that makes sense. Well, Dr. Thunder, you respond first, and then Kaizo can take it up.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically saying the same thing. I mean, and an aspect of my sort of question is really more of a statement. It's sort of,
don't choose people who are against your personality type.
Yeah, I mean, don't fall prey to somebody being pushy, trying to make you change, and that whole you got to get out of your own way. It's like you guys have seen the movie Yes Man. Now I like the sort of moral, the underlying moral of Yes Man, where if you say no all the time, you know what you're going to get. But if you say yes, and in this case, he had to say yes to everything. That was a deal that he made. But if you say yes, then there's always other possibilities. So I like that idea. Okay, that's great. But they're also in the middle of that. They've got his love interest, right? And his love interest, again, it's the same thing. He's the dude that says no to everything. He's rigid. He's only going to do a certain thing. He's very regimented. You know, he wakes up the same time. He does the same things every day. And then by chance, he ends up meeting her, and then she's chaotic and all this kind of stuff.
Don't-
And you know, and then he adapts to basically being wild, which that's great for the length of the movie.
Yeah.
But that's not gonna last. And then what's gonna happen? I'm not happy.
It becomes hell for both parties. Now, let me just give a particular with regards
Mostly
to
hell for him.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, mostly for him. For several reasons, which you could kind of see. Now, there is this INTJ. There's this type called the ENFP. Okay, this is they're intuitive first. Okay, they got NE first. They're feelers. They understand everything you're saying, right? There's this kind of wild INTJ, ENFP type of attraction. I've met one ENFP before, right? I know how it is. Okay. However, while this is not really about me, I can say that one needs to develop enough discernment to see where that path leads and say, hey, this is great. She understands you. She's ideas. You guys can talk about Nietzsche and this and that all night and blah, 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 blah. But this is not, I'm an INTJ, bro. Like, this is not, this kind of skipping from one thing to the next, it's not going to work for me. And luckily, I had passed a particular age where I wasn't fooled by that kind of a thing. Okay, so the advice to this person, to somebody out there, another INTJ out there that's seen this wild ENFP, yeah, it could work, but they better be mature. They better be mature to be able to understand a thinker, judger, or a logical person and not start with their BS about trying to change that person into some kind of a weird, ineffectual thing, right?
So something occurs to me, and it's not like we don't already know this, but this sort of underlines this. One way that you know that these sort of dating apps are really just meat market hookups is because they don't spend any time learning any of this sort of personality kind of stuff. That stuff is notably missing. Now I know that there was what was it, eHarmony, I guess, which used to have the most extensive questionnaire and stuff, but still it was not really getting down in this sort of like granular as far as what kind of personality type we're talking about. And the thing is that without that, and sort of individuals having that knowledge of themselves, and then being able to choose from people that are at least compatible personality types, then obviously they don't care, because because none of that stuff is there. None of that information is in there. It's actually ends up being more like you saying the stuff that you want in somebody else, but not being particularly descriptive about yourself, about your own qualities, which is doomed to fail. So you're just going to be totally lucky if you find somebody that's compatible that way.
Yeah, Kaiser, what you got to say about this? And we'll move to number 9 here.
Yeah, so just to sort of collate yours and Dr. Thunder's point there, I do think there's an element there of obviously it's about knowing yourself, right? Your ego, your id, and your super ego. You need to be able to be fully meditative so that you can actually understand when people are trying to manipulate you or force you into some kind of action or state that isn't good for you in long term. And because the issue is, Dr. Thunder, as you mentioned, that's FE. This fear of, let's say, if I don't if I don't change my energy state and then vibe with this other person, aka match energy levels, that you lose a person or things won't go far, and yet you want them to. So you renegotiate with yourself, and then you adjust and put yourself in the same energy as the other person, whether it's lowering it or higher, making it higher, it doesn't matter. You can do that for, like, selective events or specific experiences, right? Someone may ask you to go with them to some kind of show, etc. You can do it for those. The issue is there is that judgment, that evil spirit that comes in, where you start judging the other person for not being more like you. But this usually comes if you, let's say, do too many things together. So there's you need to have a separation of your egos, so that you're not just butting heads where either one of you or both of you have to adjust things. It has to be like, okay, I like this. This is an event where we can share the same energy. It does cost energy. And then these are other events where I need to do what it takes in order for us to get where we want to go. So yeah, if you can find someone mature, as in line with you and understanding how things really work in the world, it can work. Otherwise, what you end up doing is you end up creating hell for everyone.
Well, and then the whole like chemistry, I dig them because we have good chemistry. Okay, well that's good for animals. Mm-hmm. But if you're actually see, look, I'm actually more of a fan of you're on your purpose as a man. You're on your purpose. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and along your journey, you meet different people, right? And then you see if you get along with certain kind of folks, and that seems to be the way that works the best. It's unfortunately in certain careers there's a small representation of, or there's not enough people to go around. Let's put it that way. And so I think in the modern world, I think we are stuck with probably dating apps and all that kind of stuff, and people don't really go out like they used to. And even if you did go out, it would still be a totally crapshoot. It would be based on, oh, we had good chemistry. I like the shape of, her body. Let me go talk to her. It turns into that kind of stuff, which has nothing to do with anything. So, so anyhow, I mean, I'm not trying to turn this totally into that, but I think part of the value of this discussion in given the space that we're in, having this discussion, is that understanding your own personality type well, understanding who you're the types that you're going to tend to be compatible with, and then understanding yourself well enough so that if somebody is trying to get you to do stuff that long term you're not going to be able to maintain, it because it's just not going to happen. You can save yourself some time.
100%. I'm going to say, yes, of course, this is about understanding yourself, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others. And the most consequential relationship is your relationship with that, whatever they call it, right? Intimate partner, whatever the hell they call it. So let me put down a couple of things before we play number 9. And so my wife, I still think, is an ISTJ. So far, that's the working theory. Now, I know what to listen to her about because I know what she has high up in her function stack that I have low down. And one of them is what we call SI. SI is that, so I'm just I just wake up and I just want to go straight to work. Okay. While I'm in bed, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about right? SI is the thing that says, oh no, maybe if you actually soaked in the tub for 3 minutes and then you did this and then you did that, all that kind of bodily stuff, it'll actually work out better for you. I know to listen to her about that. She's almost always right about it. It's almost like a WWJD, what would Jesus do type stuff. Even that when she's not there, I'm like, what would she say? And then I do that thing because it's almost always right. Okay. Now, that's me understanding the particular weakness and the particular strength she has. And then I take that up. And guess what? She appreciates it. One of the underlying points of why I mentioned that is you don't have to embody, you don't take on everything from the person. There's maybe one or two of these functions, right, that you recognize that it can actually help you, and you take that on, right? When I want to engage her in a conversation and relax, for her to actually relax, it's actually like a TE conversation, meaning I ask her, okay, so like, where are you at with, the office? She's setting up this office, blah, blah, blah. She gets right into it. Okay, so now we've gotten 3 chairs and this and that, and I'm talking to this other person. I'm going to fill out the invoices for this, and she's chilling. This is not going to work for certain other types of people. In ESFJ or certain other types, bringing up TE to them, no, they want to talk about FE. They want to gossip, right? That kind of a thing. So you need to understand the different buttons that you can push, and also the things that you can take from them. Because if you can take one thing, they're not going to try to, typically if this person isn't mature and a good human being, they're not going to try to change you in all other ways. If you simply take her advice regarding, hey, maybe you should eat, maybe you should take a nap now. And you do know that is your weakness, which it happens to be mine. I don't know when to eat and take a nap and all those other kinds of things. That's not what I'm paying attention to. I have this singular focused mind that's just always looking at a goal and trying to move towards it like a freight train, right? So that's that point for now, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to the ISFP Chilani in the building. Shout out to the INTP, Mr. IC3, with his crazy questions out there. But let's go.
All right. INFP, the mediator. Do you spend much of your time daydreaming, coming up with inventive inner worlds and stories? If so, you might be an INFP. Incredibly imaginative. INFPs have rich inner lives. And if you're an INFP, you love spending time in this inner world. Look no further than at some of the most famous INFPs like J.K. Rowling or William Shakespeare to understand how vibrant an INFP's inner world can be. Your creativity, however, is not a means of escaping from reality. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's instead derived from a need for a higher calling or purpose, which you communicate through your creativity. Number 10,
All right. Authenticity. And shout out to Chilani. Chilani is an authenticity type person. These are FI people. The first function of an INFP is introverted feeling. Okay. This is that authenticity thing. INTJs have it high up there too. That's why you have people like Ayn Rand who just go on and on and on about being an authentic human being. And it's all about this heroism and this unique identity thing. And they want to bang it into everyone's head, right? That's kind of how these FI people are. And their second function is NE, which is that extroverted intuition. They make connecting dots, right? So they're intuitive, so they're imaginative, so they're abstract, right? They have a facility with the idea space and the abstract space, if you will, right? But coming from this place of authenticity to NE and then SI and then TE being a rather weak function for them. So these are not going to be people whom are going to be able to organize 7 businesses like my wife can, right? But they're going to be the inspirational, authentic type, following their dream, their passion, blah, blah, blah. Kaizo, what are your initial thoughts about this FINE SITE?
Yeah, great question. So let's use Chilani as an example of potential INFP. So I'll look at the archetypes where it kind of flows. So with people like this, right? FI first people, right? So they're introverted, right? They have an introverted function as first function. That means the whole worldwide, they're taking in all their experiences. Okay, this person made me feel this way. This experience made me feel this way. I'm a Muslim, right? I support Palestine because XYZ. I would even use logic to go into the head and be like the original people of that area were the Canaanites, right? Who got taken over by the other people, right? So I'll create this narrative, right? So these people do create narratives in their minds, right? Because their ego, it's a lot more sensitive. There's a lot of complexities there, right? As you mentioned, authenticity. Now the next function is NE. So NE allows them, right, extroverted intuition, the ability for them to get new ideas in and out so that they're not too involved and insular to the point of madness. So that gives them their creativity. You know, they're interesting. They like to talk about this topic over there. Islam, they want to talk about African politics, they want to marry an Arab but still consider themselves African. You know, they have all these, interesting ideas, right? But one thing that they do suffer from is the ability to be productive. As you mentioned here, it's not just an INFP can't run 7 businesses; they can't even run one, right? They are what we call TE polar, right? Because TE. Let me just confirm that is TE polar. Yeah, it
It's
more or
TE
less is.
fourth. TE fourth, yes.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. It's weak, right? So when they're there doing the TE, it's so weak that they can't actually go out there and execute things correctly. So they'll get flustered. They'll be unable to move and make things work in real time. So INFP's high IQ, actually one of the highest IQ types. They're interesting. They're creative, but they can't manage complex, real stuff in the real world. You remember that INFP worker you had who couldn't even have the balls to say, "Hey, I can't complete this project. Give me some." He just ran away. He got overwhelmed because of his weak TE.
Yes. So, Dr. Thunder, do you know any of these such creative theories out there?
Oh yeah, I know a few of them. So one aspect of it, that whole not being able to sort of do certain things in the real world.
And just before you answer that, Dr. Thunder, I think this is why when we do this really annoying TE obsession or IQ test, okay, or IQ, does it correlate with success in business or money and all that stuff? Well, it does, but not as highly as people would expect it, because I would say more often than not, your personality type impacts
Yep.
more
Yep.
on success. Do you have the discipline? Do you
Any
have the
high
mental fortitude?
intuitive type can do quite well on an IQ test, right? If they just apply enough logic, right? But
Mhm.
we all know high intuitive types that can't do crap in the world.
Yep.
But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, it's your personality type that really determines how far you go in life. There's my mom used to say crazy stuff, heuristic stuff like altitude is more important than attitude is more important for your altitude than natural ability. And I'm like, no, but I know exactly what she means, right? It's like, yeah, it for people, yes. So yeah, personality is way stronger predictor of where someone's life is going to be than perhaps IQ. And again, this is normalizing IQ, right? We don't talk about
Yeah,
extremes.
and before Dr. Thunder comes back here, given that thing that I just described about waking up and just constantly thinking about what I'm going to be doing, that's an IQ. That's not has nothing to do with how intelligent I
Yeah,
am,
yeah.
right? It's just that that's just what my focus is. So if you compare that with like an INFP who is, thinking about it, this is daydreaming and da 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 da, and you spread out over 20 years, who's going to get further ahead with regards to getting things done in the real world, right? It's not even a question, right? But go ahead, Dr. Thunder.
Okay, so here's one of my. This is interesting because hyperproductivity. It seems like there's going to be a disproportionate relationship between that and personality type, and to a large degree, personality type is not really something that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if you compare that with, if you consider that with all of the sort of motivational products that exist, all of the sort of strategies to be more productive, or ways to, whatever it is, to accomplish whatever goals, or even stuff like acknowledging or noticing principles like the 10,000 hours principle that Malcolm Gladwell puts forth in his Outliers book. So one thing that he doesn't talk about is he's not talking about people's personality types, and he's not making any sort of connection between what kind of personality types disproportionately were represented in his samples, in his sample. like the in his subjects.
Gladwell definitely has a narrative that he's trying to push, which has to do with randomness, has to do, you were born into this kind of a family, blah, 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 certain random things, and then you came out that way. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just think that's interesting. It's another nature versus nurture sort of conversation. And yeah, now one thing he says in that book is that natural ability, although it is an important factor, the important part of it is that you have at least enough. So you don't need to be off the charts with the natural ability, but you have to have aptitude. You have to have a certain base level of aptitude. It's the combining of this 10,000 hours with that basic level, whatever minimum level of aptitude of natural ability, that sort of does this thing. So he seems to be sort of tipping the cap somewhat to effort or the sort of attitude over intelligence or natural ability, like Kaizo's mother.
No, but that's a really good point. So if we use, let's say, runners, I don't like running. I like basketball, which is also I guess it's more like explosive bursts of energy across, and there's also another game being played, but I don't like running continuously. So I suppose that I had the genes to be a sprinter or even a long distance run, even worse. I would never reach that peak because I don't have the mental fortitude to go through the path of most resistance in that
Wait a
case.
minute. What kind of Kenyan are you that doesn't like long distance running?
Uh-oh. Hey, well, not the dusty kind. So, I didn't have to run to school. Like, these other guys literally had to go avoid lions and hyenas in order to get to school. In my case, I was homeschooled. But anyways, so yeah, I can't run even if I had the genes for running, right? I'm not talking about health level. I'm talking about the actual genes for, because I would never do something that, to me, I have to put so much energy in just to even maintain it, unless I was desperate. So unless I was born in some dusty village and running was the only way out, I would never fulfill my running genes capacity. Now, in some terms of science, I can, and I did, right? At least
Yeah, I was
partly.
about to say that because I mean, as like if it's idea space, yeah, you be there all day, all night, digging into
Yep,
physics, right?
exactly. But running, and it's not my personality type. My body is not wired towards physical exertions and running towards one singular mile. It's not interesting. But basketball is fun because you're engaging. There's new things coming across of you. You have to, it's more engaging than something like running. So I do believe, yes, 100%, your personality type has a huge impact on the types of fields. So there was one thing I think I didn't mention, is there is a cultural aspect to success, right? If the society has created games that are relevant to your personality type, hey, you have a running chance, pun intended. If there are no games, you create your games, and this is what the intuitive shamans did. They just created new games where they could now have value in that society.
Yeah, an interesting thing you brought about the shamans. You see, the shamans were typically the ones that people went to, or societies went to, when things were in chaos. There's a crazy famine and X, Y, and Z, and hence they went to this intuitive type, right? And like, hey, what are we supposed to do? And since they're good with ideas, and they're probably being in the bush trying to hopefully studying things and looking at patterns and so on and so forth, they know, okay, well, how about we try this? How about we organize things in this way and that way, such and such. And typically that's why you don't need as many intuitives in the world. These are rarer types because things are ideally not always in chaos where you're constantly shifting and reevaluating and such and such. Shout out to IC3. You see, I don't know if you want to say something here about what IC3 wrote. Okay, not exactly what he wrote because he's mentally ill, but but the spirit of what just where you fit, right? as an INTP, I see 3 where he fits, right? And it should be in there's going to be all the creation of certain kinds of logical systems. These are perhaps like good programmer types. They're great with logic, right? And maybe you're not going to be building 17 businesses, neither should you care or even value that, right? That's not where you're at. But Kaizo, any word for what crazy IC3 is saying?
Yeah, quote, getting things done in the real world. What if you cannot fit in the real world because reality is a matter of cultural perspective? So, if we break this down, the main thing is if you can't fit into the real world, I think you're basically saying what we were saying, right? If you're not, if your function stacks, the way that you've been created, can't fit in with the games that have been created in the real world, and he's also saying that those games are being created by cultural lenses. So he's basically saying, hey, look, he'd rather stay in the meta space, in the metaverse, and not actually go out there and find real solutions because that's what he's good at, right? I think someone like Dr. Thunder grew up in an interesting time where there's also the father sharing skills being passed down and then enjoying it, right?
I taught him how to change brakes and stuff. Maybe IC3 needs get his hands dirty.
The funny thing is, he was actually in a high ranking. I forgot which gaming company it is, right? One of these.
Namco.
Yeah, Namco, etc. So he did get there, and he didn't get there with qualifications. He got there by creativity. The problem is when things got real, right? He was now dealing with managers, upper level, middle level managers, and culture and FE. He failed, and that's how he got removed from that company. He didn't understand the social aspects. So that's what his crazy stuff is talking about.
Yes.
He couldn't fit in with that aspect of cultural perspective and understanding about handling managers from different cultures. So they called him crazy and they put him in mental institution. So that's a perfect example of someone that failed at FE.
Yeah, and by the way, IC3, we've had these conversations before, right? With regards to this specific point about what I call like the wet, kind of in the swamp, which is what I call the FE stuff, right? With good NI, good introverted intuition, I know how to navigate FE quite well, which mostly involves avoiding it, okay, for the most part. And then there are a few key buttons you need to push. I talked about, and you have to have a good working theory with regards to how these human monkeys operate, mimesis and this and that, like the good chemistry understanding, right? So just saying that to say that each time me and IC3 talk, Mr. IC3, now I'm addressing him, we always get to this point where it's like, oh, I don't tend to, that, him now saying that he does not consider the FE wet, monkey business of human beings, because he's coming at them with logic. I'm like, dude, people are not rational, bro.
It's interesting. Just before you move on, and also Dr. Thunder, what I did notice is something which is kind of interesting. With human beings, right? And this is part of your, the whole building up a model of how human nature is. Humans don't reflect, and they don't, continuously grow by reflecting and then changing their behavioral patterns. For example, someone like IC3, he's programmed, right, using his function stack from his personality type, INTP, to think the way he thinks, right, using logic and and all that stuff, building models. When he's challenged by other people that don't think the way he does, he has no solution for that moment. He just goes back and does the same thing. This is what human beings do. Unfortunately, humans cannot reflect. Very few people can. And if you understand things like this, you can actually put people in nice, neat boxes and then operate with them as toolboxes as a surgeon to know when, how, to what extent you can engage with them. Because if you don't, what you'll do is you start projecting the way that you do things onto other people, and then you'll get yourself messed up.
Shout out. I think ISFP, I'm guessing. IS has been written here on the screen. But ladies and gentlemen, as you come in, go ahead and click that like button. We are talking about the MBTI personality types here on Getting Ish Done. 6:30 in Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Every Wednesday, I conduct the Thunder, breaking it down, giving you what you need for that productivity. Hashtag skills and resources.
ESFP, the artist. Like INFPs, ISFPs are also highly creative and have rich imaginations. Where they differ from INFPs, however, is in their sensing dimension. This means that ISFPs are more present focused, whereas INFPs are more focused on the future. Because of this, if you're an ISFP, you'll be more focused on how to extract value from the present moment rather than from the future. You might, for instance, spend extra money on an experience like a concert or an art show instead of investing it. To you, it's much better to enjoy the present moment rather than stress about future events that may or may not happen. Number 11.
ISFP. So similar to the INFP, they're both FI first. So these are people whom are about that introverted feeling, sense of authenticity, sense of who they are. They have this very strong core, right? Typically, FE first people, like maybe like a ESFJ or ENFJ, that's the opposite. These are people who don't know who they are. My blood starts boiling once I start talking about FE first people, but they're people too. But these are people who just don't know who the hell they are, and then they blame you for not knowing who they are and all that kind of stuff. They're kind of annoying until they mature. Now, back to the ISFP. Okay, the ISFP has that FI first, but unlike the INFP, which follows it with NE, with extroverted intuition, they follow it with SE, which is a sensing function, which brings them to the present, to write what's in front of them. I'm drawing a line on this page. They're probably going to be better at technically executing their imagination than, let's say, this INFP person whom is imagining lines as opposed to the particular line that's in front of them. They're both TE polar. They're both weak in that TE aspect and such. But Kaiser, what are your thoughts about the ISFP, which is a FISE and an NITE?
Yeah, so these are like the intuitive sensor sister types. So, for example, in ISFP, they do have FI. They also have SE second. So that gives them that sort of real time sensory excellence, right? So a lot of Africans have SE because they're really good at doing things in real time. If you've noticed, Africans, for example, if you're trying to move houses or do anything that requires sort of real time integration, Africans can usually do that really well, right? And people like who are ISFPs are very good at SE. They can see things, like they can see things, do stuff in real time, and engage and not miss out because their minds is more focused temporarily to the present. I agree with that statement 100%. The thing is, again, like INFPs, they have TE, extroverted thinking, at its lust function. So for you to try to, let's say, do things with them, things just don't materialize in the time frame, in any realistic timeline in the real world. These are the kinds of people that either, let's say, they're artists sitting there making money from work that they do slowly. They also need that sort of real time attention. They need that real time. They feel, these are the people that have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, because they don't trust in the intuition that experiences repeat themselves in the future and that they will be able to get that same experience in the future because they're tuned in real time, right? So, it's very different from the SI people who build, this strong, vivid memory perception. These guys build very strong, real time, real experience, sort of stuff. And of course, with ISFPs, what they might do, because they're feelers and not thinkers as well, is not pay back their technical debt. So that's how, let's say, they will end up, perhaps a negative aspect for them is they might not pay up the technical debts. So they don't actually do anything in the real world.
Yeah. So technical, and sorry, Dr. Thunder, just he says technical debt, and just to basically explain what that is, shout out for posterity here. Technical debt basically meaning, when you're doing something, you have to take certain shortcuts, right, in the beginning or at some point, but you need to pay for that shortcut later, right? Like, okay, I'll avoid looking at this particular thing. I'll make this particular assumption here. I'll just kind of do this in order to get to this point, but then I have to go back and catch it. And doing that is a TE kind of skill, right? And they're TE polar. They're going to take a shortcut, never pay it back. Things never last. It crumbles. Go ahead, Dr. Thunder.
So wait a minute. So is it FP or SP that's in the moment?
SP. They're very much in the moment. They, I know some actually. to me, it's even small experiences, they want to milk it because they truly don't trust in the future that the future will present the same or if not better experiences. So for them, anything that happens that they can milk, they want to do it. And also because they have NI on the third function, NI, if it's well trained, it will look like they're intuitives actually, because they get things very quickly, right? That's what NI does. NI um, collates information and then gives you a solution. But because now they just using the intuition with their feelings, right? Sorry, the intuition with their feelings, it's not going to be a correct conclusion. It's going to be a very muddled conclusion. So they have very great observations but bad conclusions.
Yeah. Um, so generally speaking, part of masculinity is the ability to prioritize the future over the present moment. A delayed gratification, being on your purpose, is about developing value over time.
This is why a lot of incels will tend to be probably ISFPs, if I'm following your train of thought, Dr. Thunder, because there are men who look at the reality of their lives today rather than what they could be, especially if they fulfill certain cultural markers like grooming, success, monetary wise, confidence, and all the other aspects. So for them, they don't trust that, hey, look, I may be here right now, but I'm going to work on myself. And one day I'll, interacting with chaos, things will line up. They don't believe in that. They only believe in right
See people
now.
that are measuring jawline angles and stuff. Like it's got to be
Exactly
literally
right. This is
33.5 degrees.
that's exactly it, right, Dr. Thunder? They're the kinds of people that are measuring jaw lines. These guys are 6 because of that protruding forehead that comes up by 3 degrees angle on the left cheek. And that's where they're stuck, right? You tell them, hey, become a passport bro. Literally, you will get women if you go to here. No, I can't do that because blah, blah, blah. These are so for men, this is 100% not a good personality type if the environment around them doesn't value their existence.
Yeah. So, and then what is it? So FP, F as in Frank, FP. That's the in the moment person. SP, S as in Sam. That's the one that can actually
Yeah.
look towards the future. Okay. And so it seems to me that there's something. I wonder if we did a and I'm sure that they have collected enough of this data to make some of these assessments or whatever. But it seems that perhaps in a traditional society, you're going to have more men that are SPs, even if you have more women that are FPs. And it seems like even in modern society, you're going to have a lot of women that are going to tend to be more FP.
Okay, I can't answer that question that specific, but I can add a slightly different point. I know that there's more SJs than there are Ps because society kind of needs SFJs and STJs to run society. Without those types, society doesn't function. The Ps are less because they're less. Like let's say ENTPs or INTPs, people like us, we're not really as productive in society's um, point of view. So we're kind of less than them.
Most ESFJs are women. They're not a lot
Yes.
of that kind of stuff.
And then men will be
ESFJ is a Karen. Most Karens are women. ESFJ is a Karen. Society likes to have a bunch of Karens because that's what society is, right? But anyways, go ahead. I just did a tautology, I know. But anyways, go ahead, Dr. Thunder.
Yeah. So that just seems to be an interesting. So there's obviously with personality types, and then with other sort of general assessments that we make, or systems, or observations, about men and women and different qualities that they're going to tend to have. I mean, for instance, like the yin yang thing, where the structure or order and chaos and the balance between those in that symbol. So it's yeah, it's 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 interesting how other stuff sort of overlaps. Obviously, there's no
Hmm.
it's probably
Is
not
it for, is
mutually exclusive categories. Really, we're talking about a lot of
it,
overlap.
is it okay for me to answer Chuku's question or
Yeah,
Nate?
answer Chuku's question and then also talk about IC3's question regarding personality, a society having a personality type. For example, a German or Germany being definitely a TJ as opposed to an Italian, for example. Yes, societies can portray. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, to answer your first question by Chuku, what person, what personality type embraces personal responsibility, hard work, individual initiative, delayed gratification, commitment to excellence, competition by. Okay, so there's two ways you answer this question, right? So, what embraces it by what you, well, it depends what you mean by embraces. Do you mean which one accepts that's how things work in the real world, or is it the kinds of person that naturally they have the least path of resistance? So I'll answer both questions, right? So least path of resistance, you're talking about the TJs. TJs embody this, like this is a conscientious kind of person who understands and merits. There's a societal structure. There is unlike Africa, for example, the European and Western countries, you can trust in the future because there's rigid systems that will protect you to an extent. In African countries, generally, they don't have that. So, yeah, the TJs, for example, right, uh, would tend to have this sort of conservative approach to being. That's just who their spirit is. However, the NTPs and NTJs and all those kinds of people, they would also embody this by understanding that this is how things are done, because these are logical heuristics that if people follow, generally it leads to the correct outcome. So yeah, it depends what you mean, right? And then also to Mr. Isaac question about society, yes, for example, Germany is a TEFE culture. No, sorry, not Germany, Japan. That's their culture. They value getting things done, but it's also very FE. It's very hierarchical. It's very much Mr. Sanagawa, who is the
A lot of
father of.
shame and guilt and
Yep,
hierarchy and jumping out of windows.
Now,
exactly.
how about I wonder if there's a relationship between a personality type and pookiness or thuggoness, and if there's a disproportionate personality type, or rather, if there's a personality type that's disproportionately represented in prison.
In
Mhm.
prison.
Now, certain types of, and by prison, you mean general population, right? There are probably a lot of INTJs, like Sam Bankman-Fried, in federal prison for some kind of fraud, right? But typically, that's not. I assume that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the
Okay, so
Pookie type,
let me answer
not
it.
white collar crime. Go ahead.
Let me answer it in a long-winded way. So, uh, there was a study done showing that paraphiliacs are extremely low IQ. How did they do this? Because of the prison population. So sometimes people get caught doing certain things don't represent the actual real population because they're in prison. Uh, Again, we're generalizing here, right? But yeah, basically, the real population, so the real personality types, very high IQ criminals, depending on the field of crime they're in, are going to be unrepresented. But then also depends on the specific crime that they're doing. For example, if you're talking about bombers, you have to have a certain IQ or personality type to be building your own, explosive, whatever devices. So then that will be overrepresented by NTs because you need that kind of creative ability to execute things, learn things, or ISTJs, etc. There's certain types which will be overrepresented in specific criminal things like that, but the general prison population, you see those people less represented because general population tends to be people with low impulse control. and people that are kind of doing crime of, passions and all that kind of stuff.
So a bunch of SPs
Oh my goodness. For example,
or SJs rather.
ESTPs are overrepresented in crime, for example.
Yeah. Shout out, Mr. Fantastic. Yeah, ESTPs will be because that's what they're out there engaging the world in a rather antagonistic way, overtly, not in a hidden way, right? And then yes, people with low impulse control and then low IQ. IQ is a separate dimension from this personality stuff. But yes, but the IQ aspect is only relevant insofar as you get caught. But I think if you even exclude IQ and you talk about low impulse control, yeah, you're probably going to see ESTPs and some FP types.
How about the relationship between swag and personality?
So I don't know, Kaiser, do you have something to say about that? Now, ESTPs and ESFPs are very swaggy people, right? They got it, right?
Hey, life of the party, man.
The ESFP is a life of the party, right? They got that swag. They whatever. So amongst the NT types, the INTJ tends to have more of that. They tend to be able to embody it, right? It's not, they tend to be able to fool that swag thing more, and such. I don't know if that's what you think about that, but yeah.
I think that you shouldn't self-diagnose.
Sure.
Eddie, how? But yeah. So the swag thing is interesting. Another question is about. So one of the things that they have, dating coaches will tell you, and sort of pick up, PUA coaches and stuff, is you got to get your 100 cold approaches in, right? You got to get your 100 cold approaches. So my question is, what personality types disproportionately would be represented that actually got through the 100 cold approaches? Because they say do 100 cold approaches, not because they actually probably think that people are going to do 100. People may do 10 or something. Or 50.
ENTP, ESFP, for slightly separate reasons,
actually,
and then you answer. Go ahead,
when I used to do those kinds of stuff when I was younger, that's what I did. I just approached 200, and or even 1,000, right? Even if I'm applying for a job, I'm going to apply for every single job, thousands of jobs, and until I get one that sticks. And also, I can remove the emotional. I can regulate my emotions better because I'm just like, oh well, yeah, you win some, you lose some. Even if it's like 99% lose, I'm okay with. I've done that before in this specific context in the past, until I built the model to kind of be more heuristically relevant, like knowing what to do, how to do it, and even then, right? Yeah.
So in ENTP, NETI, FE, SI with bad FI, right? So they don't have that authenticity thing. So they're gonna just play whatever, and NE is always just driving them to go from pillar to post. So definitely ENTP will just be able to do that all day. Someone like myself, INTJ, NI is interested in eliminating things before it even engages, right? So I'm definitely not going to be. So, I mean, when it comes to something like this, to the degree to which I can talk about myself in this kind of regard, which I find difficult, but when it comes to these kinds of things, I just kind of know whom not to approach, right? So let's say I'm in Ghana, for example, and how I met my wife in Ghana, for example, right? There were other ladies there at the charity event or whatever, and I was there for like 3 weeks, so I saw different people, and it was like this and that. There's just something that I know, okay? I'm not going to explain it because it's NI, right? NI is kind of hard to explain, and we'll be here forever, and I'll be circumlocuting, and no one will understand what I'm saying. But I can tell certain things about a person, certain things that I'm looking for, which have to do with depth and a little bit of FI, which is authenticity that I'm looking for, right? And you can tell that from the first 3 sentences, right? And it's rare, those qualities that I'm looking for. So when I talk to somebody else, I'm just like, vacuous, empty, no, not for me. I'm not even gonna engage. I'm not gonna bother engaging. And also because I'm a J type, right? I'm not gonna be like Kaiser that's, but maybe if I just try this time, maybe this person is different, right? I know it's not gonna work. I already know. Okay. And I tend to be right about these types of things. And I don't have the energy for doing that kind of stuff. And I'm NI first, so I want to just narrow things down. So most likely the INTJ is the least likely to actually be doing 100 approaches if we want to create a whole spectrum from beginning to end. But go ahead, Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts?
And I think you can probably put practitioner's comment, the longer comment that she just made on there. And we probably can talk about that after I get done talking here. So of course the cold approach bros, the PUAs, the folks that actually got their 100 in, it seems that there's going to be quite an overlap between that and folks that are so-called natural salesmen. Now I know that you're in sales, but it doesn't seem to me that the INTJ is the usual personality type of a particularly successful kind of salesman. You can, yeah. What do you think about that?
100%. In terms of number, if you go to the successful end of the spectrum, in terms of number, no. However, if a INTJ chooses to get into sales, they're going to be there, right, on that end of the spectrum. But they're going to be surrounded by a bunch of ESTJs and ESTPs and all these other types, maybe a couple of ENTPs too, right there. There's this salesperson I know, Brian Berasini, very INTJ-esque. I think he's an INTJ, right? And he's one of the most successful in the kind of company. But he's amongst many other very outgoing. He's rare, right? So he's like this kind of a weird, like, Brian, So they tend to have a certain kind of celebrity attached to them too, because they're like the different type of sales guy. Like, this guy how does he do it? He never talks to anybody. How does he get these sales, right? But basically, the INTJ tends to play the long game, the snipe game, the elimination and shoot, and they know what's going to work game. But yes, 100% not the usual salesman.
Yeah, and I think I have because I'm an intuitive, and I think something I've heard you say, and something that's that's definitely true, is IQ sort of allows you to maybe get away with some things that you may not be able to get away with. So the higher the IQ, then the more possible it is to perhaps acquire different skill sets, different positives of other skill sets, and to sort of function and operate, to basically develop a system that allows you to operate in a way that you wouldn't normally operate.
That is 100% true. Those other successful people, if I'm in a room with a bunch of successful salesmen who are ESTJ, ESTP types, whatever, they don't have a system like and I'm not saying that, I'm not saying this to disparage them. I'm saying that I have a backlog of a bunch of work and crazy nonsense about attention, intention, and I have all these things, right? And I've made a couple of videos about them, right? About how I approach communication. I'm the one thinking about the fact that I'm not going to say my last name because of the effect it has, right? It's not just a thing that I just do naturally. I'm not saying my last name because it's part of a system. I'm thinking through a particular thing because it's part of my system. So I have a whole backlog of systematic things that's working as opposed to the ESTP and the ESTJ that's in that same room, right? So 100%.
Yeah, and I'm going to relate this to something musical here. So some musicians have perfect pitch. Okay, most do not. Some do. Now, if you have perfect pitch, then there are certain other skills that you don't necessarily have to develop. So a person without perfect pitch has to spend a lot of time developing relative pitch, and then sort of, for the lack of a better way to describe this, mathematical systems by which to measure intervals and other interactions to be able to make very good educated guesses that can become close to 100% accurate. Okay. Now, the problem with somebody that has perfect pitch when they're teaching someone that does not is that they never had to develop certain systems, right? And so they're not necessarily going to be great teachers of those systems. Now, they could learn what those systems are, but it's less likely that they'll even be aware. So these sort of intelligent, though they don't have perfect pitch, person, since they developed all of these systems to aid themselves, they'd also be likely better at communicating a system that someone that also doesn't have perfect pitch has. So anyhow, that is a problem. I've had a number of students that have perfect pitch. I don't have perfect pitch, but I have developed the ability to. Nobody knows that I don't have perfect pitch because I can do all the stuff that a perfect pitch person does, but I worked it out. So
there you go.
It gives me an advantage over someone that just has the natural ability, but doesn't have the skill. Right. So anyhow.
Kaizo, any comments on that point? Several points. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so I think, okay, so I think ultimately, for me, when we're looking at these personality types, there is things you can learn, and the main thing here really is embodying it with your mental clarity, meditation, and all that stuff. That's the only way you're going to utilize it in the most useful case.
Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, and we got Zone in the building. Zone, the Dusty Chinaman. I was gonna type it, but YouTube was blocking me from saying Chinaman, so I'm gonna say it. Shout out to Zone, the Dusty Chinaman.
ENFP.
Why
the
are they
champion.
fighting?
Well, there's
Chinaman is kind of offensive, right? I get it, right? No,
But you can put all kind of nakers, ninja. You can put all kind of stuff, any kind of derogatory flags.
I was surprised too. It's like they
You
don't
can put straight
Chinaman.
hard ERs. You could just
Anti-Asian hate bill or something. I don't know.
much better to enjoy the present moment rather than stress about future events that may or may not happen. Number 11, ENFP, the champion. While they're certainly capable of accomplishing big goals, ENFPs are nicknamed the champion for their ability to help Others realize their goals. Often motivational speakers, life coaches, or teachers, ENFPs find purpose through helping others succeed. And what's more, if you're an ENFP, you're naturally great at this because you're gifted with the ability to be organically inspiring and motivating without seeming like you're trying too hard. Number 12, INT.
Yeah.
I mean, these were the original, what would you call those guys? The original woke people before woke now became a thing, and things, right? They can see the future. They've got so many ideas how to change things. These were the liberation fighters, the white women and men who fought for black men's freedom.
100%. These are definitely your abolitionists, your kind of the most forward. However, the thing that they develop tends to get hijacked away from them because they're not thinkers, right? So they're not going to be able to put it around a nice, neat TE structure, right? And because they value FE, they're going to allow these losers to come around and take their stuff, right? Unfortunately, I mentioned ENFP before.
Sounds like a the black church. Charismatic preacher and the tendency for some riffraff to attempt to infiltrate. Yes,
there you go. ENFPs I mentioned earlier as they're very, for an intuitive person, right? They can be very attractive. They're like a breath of fresh air. These are the opposite of the ESFJ, right? The ESFJ, you're just like, oh my God, what a bore, right? What a Karen, what just a freaking crazy automaton with nothing interesting to say.
They're great to talk to, man. Like,
yeah, oh my God, you're like, really Jesus Christ. They're like, they get everything you're saying, all your ideations and all this stuff. Like, they see everything. It's great, and they're so basically, NE is the first function, ladies and gentlemen. We are exposing these functions. So let me go ahead and say what it is.
So these are the true intuitives: ENFP, ENTP, INTJ, and
INFJ.
Yeah. These are the true intuitives.
That means that basically their first function is an intuitive function. INTJ and INFJ have NI first function. ENTPs NE first function, and ENFPs also NE first function. So these are their brains are just exploding with ideas, right? And then they follow with FI, so they're also authenticity people, right? And then TE and SI, very good, kind of good machines, but for the fact that they're not thinkers. The thinking thing tends to be where, and by the way, I was talking to an ENFP once, and it was rather great and enchanting until I noticed this kind of a weird FI thing with them where they can just, this dark cloud can just be there that they cannot even identify. It's just a full cloud. They don't push it over with thinking and evaluation and putting it in a box. And that's how I knew, oh, okay, cool. I'm not going to be, I got to keep this person at arm's length. But anyways, NEFITESI. Kaizo, do you know any ENFPs? There's some that show up in your chat. I think Alexis and Mrs. H are an example. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Alexis, Mrs. H. Let me use Alexis as a perfect example. She comes in, she's very intuitive, very NE. Like she'll hear something and then put an interesting NE, right? The whole, the puns, right? It's not just a pun because it's a play on word, but they're using history. There's an SI aspect to it, right? There's a historical kind of in-house games being played, and they're great at it, right? They'll suggest ideas, but because they're not thinkers, their ideas obviously don't have as much scrutiny to them. So when they're suggesting ideas to them, yes, it's there, but it's not, it's just not well modeled. Like let's say Dr. Thunder or Mr. IC3 would go deep down and create a whole model system. But yeah, great people, very high IQ as well. They understand everything. They're fun, interesting, and these are the kinds of, because they have that kind of energy that you want from a woman, because they're still that feminine energy if it is a woman, right? But at the same time, they see everything you're saying, so there's less friction. It's nice. It's like, think of it this way, right? It's like ENFPs are like when you don't use a CD. The ESFJ is when you use those cheap ones.
You know what?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dr. Thun.
I want to know the educated lame. I wonder what the personality types that are overly represented with an educated lame.
NTs of all sorts. Your INTP, your INTJ, not as much an ENTP because ENTP is the Joker. So they're gonna, and they're kind of good with FE. So they're gonna be doing something a little weirder, right? And then an ISTJ, Hank Hill, right? Perhaps ISTJ is the embodiment, right, of that stuff, because an NT might seem that way but an NT, no, he's working at he's at NASA, right? He's a nerd. He's Einstein or something. Like, yeah, you can't call him an educated lame, that kind of thing. They got something superlative going on with them typically. But an ISTJ would be the embodiment of the educated lame. So yes, Zone, you were asking about INTJs, and yes, we did. We went right back to it. Yes, Zone, if you're an ISTJ, you are the lame. But we said a lot of great things about the ISTJ when we did cover the ISTJ, and I said that my wife's an ISTJ.
I think you're right.
If they're well trained, by the way, let me just go ahead and say a couple of things, Kaizo, and then you go. I'm just going to mention what their personality stack is. To basically they start out with SI, right? SI and then TE. I'm NI and then TE. Okay, and then they have FI following that, just like the INTJ, and then NE. So there's a lot of just stable, get things done, authenticity, and then they use NE to try to break up to find solutions. Nothing crazy about that type. So if their SI is well trained, right? If they have a multitude of experiences, because if SI is not well trained, if you just, in other words, SI, again, as Kaizo likes to talk about, is about these memories, right? So if your SI is trained in one village all your life, you're gonna be kind of stuck. But if they have a variety of experiences and such from different types of people, different types of experiences, different types of places, these people can be actually be very wise, right? But anyways, go ahead, Kaizo.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually, this would be the archetype. Sure. The other types that I mentioned also participate in the whole lame thing, but this will be the archetype because of the function stack. So SI is all to the memory. So if they were lames, they couldn't get girls when they were young for whatever reason, maybe black girls, whatever it is, then they got TE, and also they got FI. FI is the authenticity stuff. These people can't just be the Joker. They can't be playing high level games like the NTs might, because the NT, he will be a nerd, but the nerdiness will lead him to a powerful position where, let's say, inadvertently he gets status. So he will be benefiting from some of the NT sort of associative mechanics going on, right? But the ISTJ, unless he was he was it, right? Or he was in the environment that preferred his thinking style, he'll be stuck in whichever, he'll be a perfectionist, right? So if he's a great drug lord, he's going to be one of the best drug lords, right? If he's going to be a lame, he's going to be one of the best lames. Like, they're authentic to who they are.
You talk about being a perfectionist. I do believe that the ISTJ is one of the logical masterminds out there. And the mastermind aspect has to do with the external world. And that's why, the INTJs are called like masterminds. It's not about just logic for logic's sake, right? The whole mastermind thing is, after all, about it's associated with getting things done or being out there in the world, mastering something out there in the world. So the ISTJ is actually the logical mastermind, while the INTJ is more of the intuitive woo like mastermind. As we have emphasized, INTJs are not logical people per se. But so, Dr. Thunder, is that what, if we want to continue about your lame and whatnot? Is that, will we sufficiently addressed?
Oh, a good ICJ that you might know, Dr. Thunder, is your friend. What's that nigga's name with the white wife?
Sounds like a average black guy to me. No,
is
those are jokes. 85% of black men are married to black women.
um
Caspi.
I forget the I think
They changed their name to like some other weird stuff about relationship or something.
you're talking about Donovan
Oh,
Sharp.
you talking about
None
Donovan?
of it shot.
Okay, yeah.
He's a perfect ISTJ. You know, he knows what he knows. Very good at logic. Like one of the best logic people I know.
And he's not going to be a lame because of the aspect that you described before, where he's a big dude, relatively good look, blah blah blah. So he was like, it's not like a nice DJ that was dealt a bad card. But in terms of the
No,
logic
he
type of
systemed
mastermind,
that out. No, he systemed that out though, because he
Mhm.
was very much overweight.
Okay,
And he like made himself into that.
good. There you go.
Yeah, so
Well, yeah,
that's
continue,
he's
guys,
a
about
perfect
the
system. Yeah.
about the logic thing, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so he's extremely good at logic, so, right? So with his personality type, especially with the TE, okay, TE is second function, that makes him a thinker, but it's not just that. TI is his sixth function. It is not within his conscious stack, but he's so good at it that he doesn't miss anything when it comes to logic. Even when I spoke to him, he was able to stumble into the correct answer within milliseconds. So they're great at creating things. Now, if you compare him to Coach Greg Adams, he's not going to be able to do what he does, right? Because he can't argue in real time. But this other guy, he's great,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a perfect comparison there. Yeah, perfect comparison. Greg Adams versus Donovan Sharp. Donovan Sharp, a logician, right? Coach Greg Adams, no, not so much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have the INTP, the model builder, scientist, logic type. Before we play this video's exposition of the INTP, let's go ahead and talk about the functions of the INTP. TI first, similar to Kaizo here, the ENTP, but it's just kind of backwards. So TINE, while Kaizo is NETI, and then SIFE, while I think it's kind of the reverse with Kaizo as well. So these are similar, very similar types, INTP and ENTP, with one being a joker and the other not being a joker, if you
Yeah,
will.
this one is more likely to be a lame like Dr. Thunder compared to the first.
There you go. There you go.
TP, the thinker, adept problem solvers. INTPs try to organize and make sense of the world through their logical side. If you're an INTP, you'll likely prefer time to yourself where you can be alone with your thoughts. You enjoy problem solving, and because of your thinking dimension, believe that problems are best solved with logic rather than emotion. Because of this, INTPs often excel in positions that require the ability to problem solve, like science or engineering. Number 13, ESFJ, the
Okay.
caregiver. Are you always trying to figure out
Oh,
how to
yeah.
bring more harmony to your environment? Are you
I'm just gonna
great at
let this one
resolving
play,
conflict
then we'll talk
amongst
about
others
INTP.
and getting people to work together? You may be an ESFJ. The reason you're so good at bringing harmony to an environment, whether that's a contentious work meeting or an awkward social
Because you don't have a soul.
gathering, is because of your hyper awareness of not only the feelings of others, but how their feelings are interpreted by the people around them.
In other words, you have nothing whatsoever inside you.
This allows you to pinpoint others' needs and then work to make sure they're being met.
And then you blame them for it later. Anyways, let's talk about the INTP. My obvious bias towards the ESFJ is well known, and I do not apologize for it. But the INTP, Kaizo, go ahead and give a quick synopsis, and you can also mention the ESFJ soulless Karen, and then we'll go to Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, so INTPs, first function is TI, introverted thinking. Then is obviously NE, which is intuition, extroverted wise. And then you go down, and then you have FE and SI, right? SI then FE actually. So what that means is INTPs have an advantage over someone like me who's an ENTP because their SI is in a higher stack, -4, theirs is third. They're able to create more accurate models because SI is useful for information, memory keeping, and interrelation of concepts, right? So they're better at doing that. So let's say Mr. IC3, he can create really in-depth conceptual models about race and how that interacts with everything else. He writes notes down and he tries to be very accurate. Meanwhile, I wouldn't go down that path. I'm still more happy with new ideas coming in rather than building the best, most robust model because it's because of the function stacks, right? So for an INTP, he celebrates when his model is clean. I celebrate when my model is shown that it can improve, right? So mine is more expansive, theirs is more insular in terms of logic. With the ESFJs, these are your obviously Ike's looking through like a negative lens, so your Karens, but they're also the kinds of people that they're typical mothers, right? Your smothering mother who's out there always trying to just think everything is dangerous and everything's going to kill you, and is out there playing all sorts of weird social games, contradicting themselves, etc. So they are basically the gossip. If you guys have seen Gossip Girl or something, they are the gossipers, right? They are the
Even
people
when you tried to be positive, the first thing you said was smothering mother, gossip. Okay, go ahead. I think you're proving my point.
Okay, so I'm trying to.
So wait, just before Dr. Turner, please.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
separate. So these guys separate from the ISFJs. ISFJs, because they're SI first, they will actually truly clean your house, cook for you, and do stuff for you. SI room keeping out of authenticity, genuineness. They're not going to expect you to do the same thing for them. As long as you're fulfilling a value in their life that they feel is valuable, they'll leave you alone. ESFJs, because
Monkey double backflips too.
yeah, they'll give you. ISFJs are great. They they will even die for you, right? So they'll give you the kidney. If you want a wife that's useful, go get ISFJ. They'll even give you a kidney if you need one.
That's a good kind of this kind of dividing line between FI and FE when it comes to giving. See, an FI person will give you, and there will be no covert contracts. FE people are filled with covert contracts, right? You owe them all kinds of things that you don't know you owe them. I hate that. Go ahead.
Let me ask this question. This is right down the alley. So, I wonder if there's a relationship between okay. Okay, so in marriage, so there's this rather troubling statistic that 50%, upwards of 50% of marriages are sexless marriages. So I wonder if there are certain personality types that are more likely to bait and switch, to do or say whatever they need to do or say for the sake of the marriage, to get married for the legal marriage, but that don't really want to be there, or that are willing to withhold for the purpose of manipulation or for whatever reason. I wonder if there are personality types that would be more likely to do that and ones that would be less likely to do that.
So, you would guess, but there is a logical explanation. The ESFJ and the ENFJ, in other words, people whom have FE high up in their stack, tend to be they're not accountable. By that I mean, you see how they were described. They're looking at other people and the interpretations of other people's type stuff. That's not accountability. This is not somebody like a INFP or something like that, or ISFP, where there is a core FI, where it's like, it's me, right? There is no me there. It's, well, I did this because I thought that, and now I have changed. These are people who are likely to be like, oh, I changed the way I relate to you ever since that one night you said something, especially if they're also feelers. That's why the ESFJ, I would say, is more likely than even the ENFJ. Sensor feelers, that is, right? A sensor feeler whom is going to take a particular concrete instance way to heart and then change their FE relationship because they don't really have a FI. And all of a sudden, things have changed, right? An FI person, they're not going to be doing this kind of a swing as much, right? An FI person will be prickly and such, blah, 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 might end up in divorce or whatever, but they're not going to be doing this weird dance of manipulation. FE is a interpersonal manipulation function. That's what it is. What are your thoughts, guys?
Yeah. I mean, I use FE to generate income on YouTube. It is a manipulation tactic. There's nothing, more or less about it. It's about creating a game and so-called making rules out of those games. But because it's not accountable across time, it changes, it wavers. Because now I agree with you 100%. I was going to say the same thing, right? It would have been EXFJs. Because first of all, right, now the ENFJ seems okay from paper, looks worse, but then in reality, ESFJ is worse for other reasons. But the ENFJ doesn't have SI and they don't have FI in their cognitive, conscious function slot. So they don't really know who they are. They're kind of just embodying the spirit of society. So whatever spirit that society has, you more or less will get this person acting towards that way. So if the society has been broken, then she will be doing a lot of the broken things that, let's say, in this case, women in society do. Meanwhile, ESFJs, they do have SI. So depending how they were, brought up and, all the stuff, that will impact things. But obviously, they're less conscious of things as well. So yeah, I would say those two types would most likely be the ones to start misbehaving after things don't go accurately. The FI types, they tend to be more authentic. They find it hard to play a game long term. You'll know it, right? You'll know in their face, the way they breathe, the way they kiss you. FI people, you can tell if you're being played by or not.
Now
Yes.
this is interesting, and I think that zone, what is it, 559, really wants to know which one is the one that is going to bait and switch. Apparently, they're in a vetting process. so the way that this so the order of operations is no legal marriage. You have to make sure that they'll sign off on that. We'll do your spiritual marriage. We'll do your church marriage. It'll be sacramental. It'll be a marriage in the way that actually matters, but no state involvement. So they had to sign off on that. Second thing is they got to sign off on a prenup. And then if you get them to sign off on those two things, the next thing, and actually this is probably something that you would have done before. Here, fill out this questionnaire. It's going to tell me what your personality type is. And then you can rule out the ones that are going to bait and switch on you based on what the personality type is. Hey, develop a system, right?
Yep, this is true. Now, any feeler type will present a problem to a thinker type. FE, I'd rather deal with FI though. I think I can understand it more. It's more fixed, right? It's going to be that fixed, annoying, thorny thing in the corner, as opposed to 1,000 different darts that you don't know where it's going to come from, right? That one is just chaos, right? I'd rather deal with the little porcupine in the corner that's prickly and weird and has all this kind of feelings about whether how authentic they are or whatnot than not. But I think that we've established a spectrum here. FI being the authentic, less likely to be switching on you, and FE, someone who's high on the FE stack, they tend to switch. They will switch on you. Let us play a couple. Let's play a couple.
Number 14, ESFP, the performer. Do you thrive in the spotlight? Are you known as the one who always has the best stories and is the best at telling them? If so, you might be an ESFP. This type is nicknamed the performer for a reason, as they often draw to entertainment professions like acting and music. However, despite their love of being the center of attention, this doesn't mean that ESFPs are self-centered or unaware of others' feelings. In fact, ESFPs are quite the opposite, as they're known for being incredibly caring and sensitive to the feelings of others. Number 15.
Yeah, I have a close ESFP friend. Definitely life of the party type, right? They're definitely the life of the party. Interesting. Let's talk about their functions. Okay. So an ESFP, well, let me see. That'll be SE first. Okay. So that presence, right? They have that presence, and then they have FI, which is that authenticity function. They got the TE and then NI. So they're actually pretty good. This particular friend I'm talking about started a business called Run Buddy Mobile, which is about running dogs in air-conditioned mobile treadmills. Okay, he has his van. He drives it up to you. It's in Arizona, right? It's the first place he kind of did it. So, middle-class people walking their dogs, keeping their dogs. He's like a professional dog trainer type. He brings your dog into his kind of self-propelled treadmill, so the dogs propel it themselves. Built it out. It's air-conditioned. The dogs love him and stuff like that. Now, he had that idea for the longest time, right? As opposed to like an INFP or an ISFP type, whom will never execute on anything. This guy had this idea for years, okay? And it was kind of like a band roadie, right? In my band, whatever. And he executed on it. He did it. It's very successful, the whole thing, right? So SEFITENI, life of the party, great, and all that kind of good stuff. Any quick comments on the ESFPs, and then we'll move on.
So the performer thing. So now I'm not that, but I am a performer. This seems, in some ways, it seems like my wife. Now, but is this personality type? Is this one extroverted or introverted?
This is definitely an extroverted type. The first function is SE, right? It's extroverted
Right.
sensing, and they're an E for sure, right? And they got TE, they got NI, so they have intuition as well in a good spot. Not the first, not the strongest, but it's good enough, and they can do things because they got that TE.
And you said authenticity is in there.
Yeah, FI second function, authenticity. INTJ has FI in there too in the third slot. So they're not going to be like your INFP, ISFP, whom are all about authenticity, but they got it there. They're more stable in that sense.
All right. So and which one this is what is this again? ESTP?
No, ESF.
ESFP, sorry. ESFP, yeah. And the F is for what again?
So extroverted, sensing, feeler, perceiver, right? However, the function stack is SE and then FI, right? That's their authenticity function, and then TE and NI, meaning they can do stuff. Any combination of TE and NI, NITE, that'll work quite well for getting stuff done.
Yeah, I think that's her. I think she's ISFP.
ESFP, right?
I mean, this is basically
I'm sorry.
INTJ.
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, this is like a retarded version of an INTJ, where the stacks are the opposite way.
Why you gotta go after Dr. Thunder's wife like that? But anyways. Yeah, this is the kind of like the flip of the INTJ, right? And I think we kind of get along in the sense that what I always noticed is I appreciated what this particular friend of mine, like that SE that he has, that doing stuff, right? I appreciated that in him, and he appreciates my NI because his last function of the first four is NI. My first is NI. So he would always probe into the ideas, right? He doesn't generally come up with ideas, but he's always interested in like my ideas, right? And I was always kind of interested, or I respected that TE and SE and also authenticity part, right? So it's complete opposite. You're right. INTJ is NITEFISE and ENFP is SEFITENI. And let's see what number 15 happens to be.
Team. INFJ, the advocate. One of the rarest personality types, INFJs are often known for having contradictory personality characteristics. They are logical, yet highly emotional, imaginative, yet also very analytical. And despite their perfectionist natures, they can come across as very laid back. What is consistent about them, however, is their desire to better the human race. Famous INFJs include Mohandas Gandhi, Jane Goodall, Florence Nightingale, and Eleanor Roosevelt, all
And add Adolf in here. Adolf was an INFJ as well. But anyways, let's continue.
of whom are advocates for improving the world around them. So, if you're drawn to careers like social work or medicine because this provides you with the ability to help people, you might be an INFJ. Number 6.
So INFJ, a very rare personality type, right next to the INTJ. Now, the thing that the INTJ and the INFJ have in common is that they're one of those true intuitives, ENTP, INTJ, INFJ, ENFP. In other words, their first function is an intuitive function. So INFJ and INTJ are the only NI first people. NI is a very strange function. So these people literally don't see the world the way other people do. And I mean see, literally, because the first function is NI is a perception function. So with the way we take in the world is a way which is very, very different from the way others do. Literally, it's an intuitive, weird way of looking at the world. Now, what is the next function is when things change, because the INTJ has TE next, which is dry, logical, and is going to arrange things. But the INFJ has FE next, and then TI. So they're good with logic, especially if they train it. They can be very good at logic, okay? While the INTJ has FI and then SE. They both have SE as INFJ has SE as the last function as well. So let me just, for purpose of neatness, just state the INFJ again. NI, FE, TI, and then SE. INTJ and INFJ struggle with SE. So they can be quite useful to each other in the sense of that they have a similar struggle. SE being that real-time grappling with the world stuff, right? So I use my NITE to work through the SE type stuff, right? And if they can use their NIFE, they can then work through their SE as well. But both INTJs and INFJs need to learn how to deal with outside world stuff, learn how to keep things organized, neat, take care of themselves, do things that they say they would do, not procrastinate as much, and so on and so on. And I mentioned before that I think that INFJs have perhaps the biggest struggle when it comes to developing, because FE is very difficult to master. However, I think that INFJs are literally the best humans if they develop, right? I think that an INFJ surpasses an INTJ or any other of these intuitive types or whatever when they develop. And I have a couple of examples that I see that have kind of developed. One of them is Chamath Palihapitiya, right? Is a Silicon Valley billionaire type, right? So a billionaire that definitely got past that SE and such, and his FE is of the nature now that he makes discernments, and he's not stuck trying to be happy with other people and just be happy manipulating people, right? Just gone past that. You're never going to be a billionaire if you're just stuck manipulating and such. So that's my kind of synopsis of the INFJ type, the most beautiful human if they can develop past their FE manipulation. But What are your thoughts, Kaizo? And then we'll go to Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree there. So with INFJs, okay, so with INFJs, they have to compensate for the lack of TE, right? TE is in their weakest slot, which is the seventh. It's a blind spot function. So if they can somehow overcome that by improving on their SE and things like that, that's exactly what leads them to be extremely productive in the real world. Because unlike the INFPs, INFJs have more potential to do real things in the real world. And generally, I think a good INFJ would be the ones to actually fight for your rights in a actually more logical and analytical way than ENFPs would, because they really can't see the future, right? They're not just looking at possibilities of the future. They can really see the projection of time in a very inward manner as well, like converged manner. So, and also if they improve their TI, the third function, and they use it more like a tool function, and they supersede. Okay, so if they learn how to control the FE and a TI in the things that matter in the contextual frame, they definitely can be one of the best, 100%.
Any thoughts on INFJ? Indeed. Okay, no, we have one more. Any thoughts on the INFJ, Dr. Thunder?
No. Let's do you now.
No. We already did the INTJ. Well, let's see what number this last one is.
16. ENFJ, the giver. The counterpart to the rarest Myers-Briggs type, the INFJ, is the ENFJ. The ENFJ differs from the INFJ in their extroverted dimension or their need to get energy from others rather than time by themselves. Their similarities, however, lie in their caring nature and desire to help make the world a better place. If you're an ENFJ, you're likely an attentive, natural leader because your passion to improve the world naturally inspires those around you. Speaking of those around you, have you ever wondered if you're smarter than the people around you? Watch this next video to find out if you're smarter than most people.
That's a good
Keep
one.
watching.
Interesting that they brought up the leadership. Now, when it comes to being led or having a leader, which is something, by the way, that INTJs are averse to taking leadership positions because of just you don't really like the FE thing. Very capable leaders, but will only step in when there is a need to, right? In order to kind of get rid of inefficiency or whatever. But a whole bunch of the life of the INTJ is avoiding having to deal with leaders. Now, when it comes to being led, I'd rather be led by an ENTJ or an INFJ. An ENFJ, no, right? I don't. ENFJ, the Neil deGrasse Tyson types, I just find that they're just insufferable people, in my opinion. And ENTJ, yeah, it's got TE up there, it's got NI, they're cut and dry. I don't have to deal with any of FEBS. INFJ, because we're very similar, I can get them, right? But the ENFJ, and this is my commentary on ENFJs, is that basically I'm not a big fan of their leadership style or their whole approach to doing things. But let me go ahead and state their functions again. They're FE first, hence one of my issues, right? That all that Neil deGrasse Tyson smiling and doing it's all BS. It's all manipulation. And then NI next, and then SE, and then TI. Nowhere in the top functions do they have TE. So they tend to be they tend to not to get to the point quickly enough, and they love to hear themselves talk. Those things just crush my soul. Not a big fan of ENFJs, but anyways, what are your thoughts, guys? And then Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, so Neil deGrasse Tyson is a great example of an ENFJ archetype. They're intuitive enough to see relationships in the world, since he's a scientist, astrophysics, but he can use the intuition to generalize about science, and he does that relatively well. Apart from the areas when, again, he starts behaving badly, he now takes on that teacher role too seriously, starts thinking he's smarter than everyone else because he notices things that other people perhaps don't notice in the same way. He's playing the FE game. Because if you notice people like this, for example, he never mentioned the whole black experience until it became relevant for his career. I'm not saying that he has to. It's just something I noticed. He plays, a social game too much. Right now, he's playing, let's get busy together game. Before he was playing, let me make the average white person think I'm the smartest game. There's always games he's playing, and also he behaves badly, right? In order for him to shine, he doesn't even let people who invited him on their podcast to speak. So all of that stuff, I think, for me, is the more of the FE games that annoy me with these kinds of people. But yeah, they're okay people. The issue is also speaking to them, they generalize people in a really weird way. They don't accept, from my experiences with them, they don't accept you as an individual soul. They generalize you. So when we create these models, we know that these models collapse at a specific point. For ENFJs, with my experiences, they just think as human beings as heuristics. There is no acknowledgement of specific sort of accounting of this specific human being, etc. And they generalize for you. They want to tell you what you should want, as opposed to accepting. Yeah, they don't believe in human autonomy.
So not having SI, as you had mentioned before when you were describing the ESFJ versus the ENFJ, right? Yes, the ESFJ at least has SI. Not having SI or FI in that top function, yes, they're not going to see authenticity or realness or anything unique about people, and they're just going to go around acting like a complete idiot, like Neil deGrasse Tyson acted in the last Joe Rogan episode that he went to. He was also on Patrick Bet-David recently, and he totally acted like an idiot again. It's just something crazy. Cringe is the word I'm looking for about the way they go about being in the world. But anyways, Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts about Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah, he's a little kind of too. I don't need all that. Just give me the arguments. I prefer not to have. Yeah, it just it's like, are you compensating for something? And then it's like, if you have good arguments, then you don't need to do that. So if you have good arguments and you're still doing that, then you're risking that I'm going to not listen to anything that you have to say. So you just wasted. I don't know. I can't do it. I mean, it's like it's like being in a. And then again, I can learn from. So the thing that's irritating about it is not somewhat like watching somebody that behaves like that and they deliver their message, because I can hear what they're saying. So that's not the issue. The issue is when they want you to participate. that's where I tap out. I can't do it. I'm not going to participate. You're never going to be able to get me to. I don't do the. Okay, so if I was in church, you're not going to be able to look at me and be able to tell what kind of spiritual experience I'm having.
Uh-oh, you and Kaiser here are going to commiserate about your experiences in church, and we are like, is this what God really wants? Am I a bad person because I'm not doing what these other people are doing? Anyways, go ahead.
yeah. I'm not gonna, jump around, all of the external stuff.
Yep.
I'm not gonna do that. I just don't do that. That's not how I experience reality. I experience it in my mind.
Yep. I remember when I was growing up, and my mom's making us sing these cringe songs together. I used to do it because I didn't want to show that I was weak emotionally by showing my emotions, but I was stoic there, right? And I was like, I didn't want to be weak, right? Showing things like depression and all that kind of stuff. So I just sat through and I sung, begrudgingly, and I was like, I really don't want to sing with these people. Right. So I had to obviously, just be like, no, this is not how I interact with nature or the absolute reality. Or when my mom tried to tell me that I should be speaking in tongues, and I'm like, no, like,
yeah, Dr. Thunder, you were lucky. This ninja, they try to. This ninja had to speak in tongues. They were like,
Like,
"Oh my god,
that's the only way.
Oh, hold up. I mean, I grew up in a church like that. I mean, you know, they was trying to have me speaking in tongues too, man. I grew up in a church like that too, and see,
Yeah, they don't accept like unique experiences because they don't see the spirit of what's going on, right? To them, it's all to do with it.
Look, it's
traditions.
overran. It's overran by people that believe that the external, all this external stuff is the evidence of it. So,
Right.
so people that are introverts and people that are cerebral, there's not really a place for you in low church, in the low church, as it were. There's not really a place for you. And low church not being a pejorative, that's just that's a different. It's just a classification for the how worked out the liturgy is, and how in how sacramental and liturgical, how in depth the liturgy is. It's more of an assessment of that. But in low church, there's not really a place for like cerebral kind of folks.
Yep.
And it's it's dry and frustrating because I can deal with you. I can be like, okay, this is how you experience it. That's cool. But just don't come over to me and try to act like I'm supposed to do the same thing.
Oh
okay.
My God,
that's cool. You guys passed out over there. I saw, that's cool. You must be catching the spirit. You're running around over there. Okay. Don't come by me thinking that I'm going to fall down and you're just going to keep doing what you're doing. And it's not going to do anything. I'm just going to keep standing up because that's not the way that I just don't like it that there is not, there's just not space for people's personality types. I mean, there certainly is in scripture, because if you look at the gospels, each one of the gospel writers, they had different sort of skills, different gifts, different personalities, and you can see it in the writing.
Right?
So it's okay there, but apparently it's not okay.
Yep. Exactly. That's for me the whole. You're not being authentic with God unless you do this specific practice that we've deemed is the most important. Right. I'm like, no.
What is the next step to get the snakes out? Yeah, see, if you really believe, then I just see that's because that's where that stuff goes. That's the logical outgrowth of that. I mean, and if people are honest and they don't put sort of like artificial, I don't know, subjects in higher esteem or something than others, that's where the logic goes. You in order to show that your faith is the most fervent, that it's the most this and that, then you need to be the person that is running around the church every Sunday, doing backflips and everything else, speaking in other tongues, trying to get people to pass out under the power of the Spirit. You have to be that's the thing. And I can't do it. But then, like, right after the service, you go up and you ask them a question about, hey, I'm just wondering, you say that we should follow the Bible. Why is it that we should follow the Bible? Or, well, because God wrote the Bible. Well, how did that process work? In particular, like with the New Testament canon of Scripture, like how did that whole thing work? Did the Bible just like float down from the heavens, like illuminated, or like how did that work? And then that's seen as being defiant. Now you're being defiant, plus you're the cat that won't fall out under the Holy Spirit.
True.
So now it's like, now you really got no place.
Yeah. You're lucky you're still Christian.
Founders up there.
Wait a minute. I tell you, I don't like the looks of this at all. Wait a minute. The king size superplex.
All right. Well, a little bit more.
Hey, if she's really saved, then she won't be injured.
All right. I'll stop.
No, the entrance, okay, I appreciate the entrance. It's when they try to now force me to participate. Like they start putting
Right.
their hands on my head, and somehow I'm
Right.
supposed to pretend that I fell over. The entrance was cool. That was swag.
Yeah, you can walk in any way you want to walk in. That's fine. You know.
You know what? I'll tell you, if the pandemic if the pandemic helped to slow down, or I'm sorry, let me back up. If the pandemic in these sorts of church communities, if it has helped preachers to better respect the personal space of others, then maybe it's been a good thing.
Mhm.
Oh man.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
ENFJ is the type that tell you should stop eating meat and start putting in your face because it's bad for humanity and the environment and all that kind of stuff, right?
Indeed. Now, one question for you guys here. When it comes to the NT types, you talk about the INTP, ENTP, and then the model stuff. I want to ask you first, and then Dr. Thunder. You see, the INTJ always wants to not necessarily poo-poo your model. They can see the model, they can talk about it. But when it comes to the SI points, in other words, you mentioned the INTP is going to be better with the SI models. In other words, they're going to be more keen as to the specifics of the model, like the actual data and stuff like that. It's going to be a nice, beautiful, clean model. And the INTJ is always kind of like, to hell with your model. What does it do? What can it do? And yes, I see the model, but I see that it's a wall on the left side. Who cares about the actual each brick, right? Which would be these XSI points, data points, experimental facts, right? Let's go to let's look at history or whatever the hell it is. How does that strike you, Kaizo? First of all, and then also Dr. Thunder, right? It's not just INTJs that do it, but INTJs perhaps will do it the best in terms of when an ENTJ is doing it, the ENTJs are rather clumsy when it comes to ideas, right? But how do you perceive the INTJ's kind of frustration with you guys' model and SI model stuff, Kaizo?
Yeah. Okay. So generally, especially INTPs, right, build models. These are real structures. Okay. An INTP's model is, this is very analogous and contextual, but his model is him building the great building in Dubai. That's, I don't know, like 50 stories, however tall it is, and the specifics of the engineering team and what they did to achieve that in the sand, surveying the sand elements and making the foundation. However they created it, that's created. Oh, this is how to create a tall building, and it's the model doesn't have straightforward fail positions. Okay, well, this is how to do this in this very specific context. They generalize models that sometimes explain more than they should, and the problem is when people are using SI, there is a flaw that happens with SI users, like let's say NTPs and stuff like that. They believe in the specificity of the SI, the narratives. They're not looking at the transformations. They're not thinking. It's like, okay, so if you look at Plato's forms, right? Plato is not thinking of a specific image when he's saying a chair. He's thinking of the feeling, the all the, so when you look at a chair from a forms perspective, right? AKA an I, it's transformation. It transforms, right? A chair doesn't have any specific shape. there is a point where a chair is no longer a chair, but we can all imagine myriad different types of chairs in our head right now, and they're all chairs, right? Regardless how they look, because we're looking at the form, right? The form, whatever that means, of the chair. So the difference is an INTJ type, he's seeing the forms of things. So you make an SI point, like a memory based point, and the INTJ is thinking, well, no, not like that. That can transform into this thing here. And this thing still has a spirit of that thing that you mentioned earlier. And then, so the INTJ's model is more comprehensive, and it integrates into their own generalized model much more easily, because it's all about forms, right? It leaves room for reinterpretation. But then again, if you look at the ENTP and INTJ, they won't be stuck on rigidity of ways, unless it's talking about very rudimentary stuff, because they both are, I guess, the intuitives that are just out there to accept ideation. ENTPs will accept ideas through new inspirations, and INTJ will accept ideation because the form already kind of transforms into everything else.
Okay. So kind of like a reverse of what you're saying is seeing the brick by brick, SI point by SI point, to me would be like, what the hell? I already know, as I mentioned earlier, that there's going to be a wall there, right? And it's not the brick that makes it a wall, because it could, after all, shift into this other thing, blah, blah, blah. In other words, I'm looking at the shape of the stuff. So I see SI point by SI point, or building more SI points, more and more evidence, if you will, as like
A simple
okay,
example
what the
is
hell is going on? Anyways, go ahead.
a simple example is this, right? Let's say the INTP, even ENTP, depending on basically SI users in general, ESTJ, ESFJs, and all. They might make the error of creating a block of opportunity, missed opportunities, unable to perceive an opportunity because they've defined things in. Because SI is a real thing, right? It's a memory, it's an experience. I think when I think of a chair, I think of all the chairs I've seen. I'm not thinking of a form of a chair, right? As a SI user, stereotypically speaking. So for them, if they've not experienced something, they haven't, for example, black president, right? To an INTJ, they can be president if they meet the criteria of a president, whatever that means, right? And clearly, race isn't one unless it's specifically specified. Well, not my specified. I don't mean stated. I just mean XYZ, right? They're seeing the full quant, the full mathematics playing, and how everything interrelates with everything else. Meanwhile, SI is just, as you said, building blocks, very materialistic building blocks, where there's the material strength, the weakness of the material, right? The tensile, all the qualities of materialism SI has. Meanwhile, NI can actually transform itself into what we think is something else. So yeah, basically for you guys, it's boring. It's just like, well, what are you saying, right? You're limiting yourself to a perspective when this can actually transform into something else.
Okay, so Dr. Thunder, I know you're not as studied in this thing as maybe Kaizo in terms of this MBTI stuff, especially with the functions which we're just beginning to elucidate and whatnot. But this particular point that I'm bringing, you have seen insofar as you've interacted with me, right? One of the ways in which it manifests itself is that whole list thing, right? Which is like, list is similar again to this SI points, specific points, which don't, in my mind, are like, what the hell? What is the form? What are we getting at? And then, so once I see a form, I don't care to add more data points, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but just before we answer that question, I want to add like a negative aspect of, let's say, the INTJ. The INTJ might, if they're not careful, project the form stuff into other people. So if you make the acknowledgement that NI is already so rare, like less than, I don't know, 5% of people have it or something. So if it's already rare enough, then you might run into the issue of projecting that when you're resolving conflicts, right, conceptual conflicts between other people, you might run into the error thinking that you're really resolving things, as opposed to just basically forcing other people to submit.
Correct, 100%. Yeah, we see that in panels all the time, especially, well, in panels all the time, but especially in your channel, because we're actually we're paying it. We know what we're doing, right? When these people come in, and you and the other person are battling logic and SI, logic and data, logic and whatever. And I come in and I seemingly resolve it. But it's more of a forcing people to submit because of the constructions I have created. But Dr. Thunder, what is your experience of this INTJ type of like, hey, what's the form? I've seen the form. Let's get past it. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, no sense in. Well, I think what happens is you get bogged down. You can get bogged down with details. If you're not first acknowledging the form, you can decide that you want to get closer if you want, but it's not necessary, and you can move quicker. But yeah, obviously, if you're working with someone that wants to get all granular and stuff about every single thing, then it's going to slow everything down. It's going to make it harder to get ish done.
Ish done, exactly, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the final part. Yes, we did force this one. This is probably one of the longest getting ish done episodes. I think this is 2.5 hours. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. It's probably late over there in the East Coast, probably right there around midnight. And here comes the ENFP, Mrs. H, making her crazy grand entrance, talking all kinds of whatever the hell she's talking about. Hit the like button, y'all, she says, and subscribe. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a 4-parter. The first part was on my channel, and then we did a couple of parts in Dr. Thunder's channel, I believe. And then, or maybe the first part was in Dr. Thunder's channel. Either way, 2 over there, 2 over here.
Wait, I think we
Go ahead.
caught her. She says it's 7 a.m. there, and she's probably in the UK. How can it be 7 a.m. in the UK and it's 7 a.m. here? So she's been found out. She's probably in Somalia.
She is in Somalia. That's why she never super chats, by the way. But anyways, shout out to you. Shout out to you. Now, in the first part, we went over the basic dichotomies. Are you introverted, extrovert? Are you a thinker or a feeler? Are you an intuitive or a sensor? Are you a perceiver or a judger? Out of these 4 dichotomies come 16 personality types, because you can be an intuitive, sensing, feeling, judging, or whatever, right? Basically, you can do the permutations there to come up with these. After we did that, the last 3 videos are exposing these different functions, because it's the functions that matter. Because if you watch the video that we reviewed, if you will, they just say things such as the architect, the advocate, and you're like, what the hell does that mean? But we're going to tell you, or we told you, that basically this particular person called the advocate has a FE first function, and then NI and an SE. And a FE is that extroverted feeling, the harmony function, concerned about how people feel, how other people's feelings are interpreted by other people. And these people struggle with authenticity. Okay, FE people. FI people have authenticity. And if authenticity is too high up in your stack, that also becomes an issue too, because you might get stuck inward, too inward focused. TE, extroverted thinking, is that function that gets things done out there in the world, while TI is logic for its own sake. ENTP and INTPs, those are the logical, intuitive people, great at building models and so on and so forth. We have the INTJ, whom has NI first, similar to the INFJ, NI first. Rather rare way of being. These are not particularly logical people. NI, by the way, let me just say this. Let me take a slight detour here. NI is like, it's almost like a blanket, okay, that you throw into the world. And if it of its own nature creates a logical form of whatever is being perceived without you knowing the logic. I don't know the if and statements, but I see a shape emerge. And within that shape, I then use TE, which is, analogy and, it's like this and it's like that, to form the thinking aspects of it. Okay. So maybe an INFJ out there might say that I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But basically, NI, it has logic built into it, but it's just intuition. It's just a cloud. It's like a blanket. It's like a dust. You perceive something and it takes a form, and it's a logical form. It's not some kind of weird other form. And then we can easily then jump in. And that's why I say, the INTJ or this INFJs are not necessarily logical people. NI just happens to guide us through because it takes a logical form. And then once we see the form, we tend not to want to get into details as much. If we see a stack of a list of things, for example, we want to grasp the form. We want to reduce it down to the form so that we can then move on, as opposed to having a list of 7 qualities of a high value man. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been the topic. No super chats, but anyways, we do appreciate it. Super thanks.
I think
go ahead.
I think the holidays are coming through, so people are
people are saving, and Dr. and Mrs. H is in Somalia, so definitely don't have no water over there, and children are starving and whatnot, while al kebab is also slaying them. The meager population that they do have is being dwindled even further.
Nice
what?
And making some nice shisha.
Yeah, man, that shit, and FGM and all that other good stuff that happens with it.
Yeah, I think Dr. Thunder, I think the NI stuff, right? To me, I think of it as the Force in Star Wars, right? So some people have the ability to actually perceive the Force, and then some of them can go good or the dark side. And we have INFJs tend to be the people that do the great, the good, the bad, and the ugly in the world, depending on the trajectory.
And in case someone hasn't caught onto it, you probably caught onto it, Dr. Thunder. There, when I talk about Sam Bankman-Fried and certain other things like that, there's a dark side to that NI person, both the INTJ and the INFJ, right? These are not your moralists. Your shaman. The shaman could be bad or good.
Wait a minute. Does the P makes me more of a moralist?
Yes, actually, as a matter of fact, yes.
Yep, these are the people are melanated. You can't trust them.
Well, something about melanin and tainted, and something about some joke over there. But yeah, quite seriously, that P makes you more of a moral person, because you're going to want to perceive. You're going to want to be a scout and to reopen those files that I talk about.
It makes me a better person than you.
In the moral sense, yes, I would say that you're more. When they say conscientious has to do with that. More morally conscientious.
If you notice, like for example, Doctor, me and you, we're more likely to, even though we know the answer, we want to give people enough chances to prove themselves wrong. Will see what he sees, and he'll make a decision out of that.
Yeah, and just call you a BN and write you off. Yeah, the INTJ will write you off, literally kill you. You guys are less likely to do that. This is the truth. And I'm an honest INTJ, and I'm just going to tell you.
Although I usually say INTPs are incredibly small, tiny.
Okay. Their INT penis is less than your ENT penis?
No. That's got to be wrong.
That's got to be wrong. Dr. Thunder is throwing it down.
You see the TI now. He got me with the TI. I was referring to ISTPs, right? So yeah, you see that's the TI there, Dr. Thunder. You already corrected me.
I think within seconds. Based on this measurement, the personality measurement. The personality measurement. That's what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, I think a practitioner is practicing and showing us that the super chat button works.
Indeed, the super chat button right at the end.
That's right. Thank you for that big $20 super chat. And what is it? I think she's INFJ, and potentially one of the best people evidenced by the $20 super chat.
Yep. Yeah, and it is true. Not booty clapping, and maybe I'm biased because of the NI thing, but I think that the INFJs that do get to that point of self-actualization are great. They're just like flawless people.
No, but from my experience, I found that INTJs have understood me way more than even other NTPs have understood me for the most part, unless we share the same SI. Like let's say me and Dr. Thunder, we share SI. from let's say religious SI, etc. So yeah, I found that sort of the ability to I think NI is probably the best function at okay, so for me, you can answer this, Dr. Thunder, too, but when I'm thinking from a different perspective or empathizing or walking someone's shoes, I'm not actually putting my FI in there or my sense of self in there, and then I'm actually being that person, and I'm actually removing my own sense of personhood from that experience, and I'm actually being that person. I think with NI and Ike, he's actually able to perceive things from my perspective, as in actually go into my room, sit down in my bed, sleep in my bed, right? Drink my water,
Somebody sleep.
and all of that stuff.
Good stuff there, Kaizo. Good stuff there, Kaizo. But point being, yes, yeah. I do think that in my experience with other NTs, they do. I understand them, and they do tend to think that I can understand them. Yes, and I get it. I get why that will be the case. I tend to want to understand other people, and that speaks to the point about me being able to trap people into submission, right? As opposed to arguing with them about the SI point, blah blah blah. But the NTs, because of their intuition and they're actually putting ideas out there and all that, I don't have to trap them. I just listen and I see what they're saying and all those other kinds of things. But shout out to you guys. Shout out to Mrs. H. Shout out one more time to the sponsor of the show, the INFJ sponsor of the show. $19, $20 for the iPhone user practitioner. We are out. Catch us on Sunday. We'll be getting ish done. We'll probably be talking about Palestine and how it relates to certain other kinds of things. There's a lot of narratives and a lot of cope that happens. Okay, Mrs. H, you can come through and you can do your Muslim cope about and free Palestine, and Chilani too. You can come and talk about free Palestine and cope more about Muslims and pretend like you guys don't want to bury everybody 6 feet on the ground, and then when you lose a war that you started, you're like, I'm so oppressed. It's weird. But anyways, everybody can do all their coping on Sunday when we talk about such things on Case Closed. But yeah. You laughing, Dr. Thunder? Or are you trying to say something?
No, I got it. Case closed, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. The highest level conversation on the most relevant topics in this space with an all-star panel. Make sure you come check that out. Also, tomorrow morning, I'm doing it on a special day. On my channel will be my open panel, Rolling Thunder. That's 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That usually would be a Friday show, but it's going to be Thursday. I'll also be doing my Friday show, but it won't be open panel. So if you want to join the open panel, then you got to go. You got to come tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Going to be talking about Will Smith and Jada, and also going to be talking about hate speech because there's a big YouTuber that's been quite hateful in their rhetoric towards a certain segment of the population, and their channel may be actually in trouble. So we're going to talk a little bit about hate speech, what actually is hate speech, and what is not hate speech. Criticism is not hate speech. Expressing your opinions is not a hate speech. Perhaps advocating for selective breeding, that's, yeah, I'm going to call that hate speech. So, anyhow.
There you go. And yeah, practitioner, she gave the donation, and I think she wants a acapella rendition of the song out, right? Isn't that right? That's why you gave, and that's why you're saying run, come. So shout out to you. Shout out to you indeed.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity if hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting, is not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble, from LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons will breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it, because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated, so run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, conditions here are stifling, making evil advertising. The feast are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are appalling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised. The battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners. Hey. Run, run, come, make we get it, because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it, because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it.